what's really important to remember too is that especially with abuse victims, with children who are abused in any way, remember what I said earlier about the child's mind. The child thinks that everything is his or her fault. So the child takes responsibility for the abuse. And so one of the really important things in working with abuse victims is to help them understand, even though intellectually they know. Remember, intellectually they know it's not their fault. They know it's not their fault intellectually, but the part of them that was abused, however old that part was, they're probably very, very young. That part thinks that it was their fault. And so that's why it's really important to go back in time and to, have that part of them that has been feeling guilty. I've never met an abuse victim who did not feel guilty. And it was not their fault at all. They were totally innocent victims. And yet they feel guilty. So it's really important to go back in time and to give them the information that they needed to know so that they can live through the event without the guilt. And I have never worked with an abuse victim who didn't need to know that it wasn't their fault.
They view themselves as participants rather than the victims.
Pardon?
They view themselves as a participant.
Yes.
Rather than a victim.
Exactly.
That whole thing of feeling guilty, do you think is that just natural for human beings to feel that way, or
yes.
do you think
No, I think it's natural.
I think when raising children, is there a way you can?
Well, I think it's natural, but it's also in working with abuse victims. I have found that when they tell, either if the father is abusing the child and they tell the mother, they're in trouble. They get in trouble. They're not, oh, honey, I'm so sorry. We're going to send daddy off to jail and we're going to take care of you. No, it doesn't work like that at all. The mother typically does not believe the child. The child is in trouble. It changes the relationships, the dynamics of the whole family. So then that's like a double dose of guilt. Mm-hmm. So it's like if there's something we can do, we can listen to our children. We can listen. If our child says something's going on, and, typically an abuse victim is told, don't you talk like that. I don't want to hear you say things like that again. Mm-hmm. I'm serious. They're told things like that. And so then what do? They are in trouble again.
Mm-hmm. But I guess I was talking about a broader sense of guilt, not just in that specific situation, but, sometimes kids feel guilty when a parent dies.
Oh, absolutely.
It must be because I must have done something wrong, or in a divorce.
Absolutely.
But I just wondering, now that you're talking about it, I'm kind of thinking, boy, why is it? Why do we all have such a strong sense of guilt?
We do.
Maybe it's just that feeling we're the center of the universe.
Right.
When we're young.
Right.
We feel like.
Yeah. We command everything.
Yeah.
Too bad it didn't pay attention.
Yeah.
But you have to experience all the whole event in order to reframe it, because you can't reframe something
right.
In the process of it.
Right.
Really.
And if these events are not if they're not being made, if you're not aware of the events, if you're not aware of an event that happened, because your unconscious mind is extremely powerful. Your unconscious mind wants to protect you. So a lot of times these memories are buried. And if you're not aware of the event consciously, trust me, it can haunt you and you don't even know what's haunting you. All kinds of things can develop. Blocks can come up and you don't know where it's coming from, you don't know what it is, it doesn't make any sense to you. And, then we go back in time and find out that something happened that you consciously forgot. That was really traumatic.
And that could even be in a past life?
Sure, absolutely.
I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we're going to do a past life regression probably the first Tuesday in June.
One of the things about past life
Don't you think all this happens though so we can get on the path that we came here for?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you look at it from another point of view, from an even broader point of view, and I know that especially with abuse victims, they have a really hard time accepting this, we have a blueprint. We created a blueprint when we incarnated into this lifetime. And I'll tell you another thing too, that God doesn't give calculus to first graders. You don't choose things. I mean, it is free will, it is choice, of course, because you choose, okay? But you don't choose things that are extremely difficult unless you are at the level of maturity to handle it. And it's a really cool way of thinking about things because it takes the victim out of it. Now, I'm not saying that the child wasn't a victim. Don't misunderstand me, please. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying that is an adult, as a soul, as an evolving spiritual soul, we are not victims. We may be victims in this plane, in this realm, but not in the spiritual realm.
Mm-hmm. If you chose that scenario.
Exactly. Exactly. There are books you can read about this. Read Courageous Souls by Robert Schwartz. Fascinating book. Fascinating book. Courageous Souls, Robert Schwartz. And that's just one of them. I mean, there are many books that you can read about how we choose to incarnate and what we choose to experience. You may not choose the exact incident, but you can certainly, choose to experience something so that your soul will grow in a way that it otherwise couldn't have grown.
So do you think you're born that way, or it's choice?
What do you mean?
Like the homosexuality.
I think it's a choice. On a soul level.
Are you born with it?
Yeah, but it was still a choice. On a soul level, yeah, I think that probably homosexuals choose to come in as homosexuals. Perfect example in the book of what Robert Schwartz wrote about. Yeah, because when you think how difficult that is. I mean, when you come in as a homosexual, you come in with a whole different set of problems.
But the argument with most of the churches is that free will isn't a choice. Well, it's like anything. Free will is a choice. I mean, depending on if you're talking about before you came or after you've been here.
Right.
I remember reading one of the astrology magazines about famous homosexuals, and it's the way the planets were at a certain time. That explains why about 10% of the population is either gay or bisexual.
Well, and not negating that, but honoring that, couldn't the soul choose to be born at that time?